Hello and welcome to U.S. Cricket Daily, the podcast covering all things Major League Cricket. I'm Peter Della Penna, and with me again is Aaman Patel.
Peter, we had the final, and I'm dressed for the winners, the Washington Freedom. They got the win. And for all you guys, all you Unicorns fans, don't worry. I had the Unicorns jersey ready. If they had won, I would have worn it, all right? It wasn't just if Washington was going to win that I would wear this, but the most dominant team across the competition, they got it done today with yet another dominating performance, 96-run win.
As somebody who is born and raised in North Carolina and is a Patriots fan, I would expect nothing less from Aaman Patel to be a bandwagon jumper. Having both jerseys ready, whoever was going to win, that's who he was going to be showing up his support for.
Peter, before we jumped on, you were talking about how some of the Aussie guys are throwing American football. And when in Rome, you got to do what you got to do. And when in Rome, and you had the jerseys from last season because the teams gave them to you, you got to wear them. So when in Rome, you wear the jerseys, Peter.
I hear you. Okay, I'll give you a pass. I'll give you a pass on that one, Aaman. Before we get to what happened in the final, which was a lot of one-way traffic for Washington Freedom, we got to remind everybody that U.S. Cricket Daily is brought to you in association with Clyde Hill Publishing and its book imprints, Clyde Hill and Pulley Press, which are dedicated to founders, innovators, thinkers, and tinkerers everywhere. Pre-order our book on the rise of Major League Cricket in America at ClydeHillPublishing.com.
Yeah, and you can also follow us at US Cricket Daily on Instagram, X, and TikTok. You can also watch our episodes on YouTube. Just search US Cricket Daily, and don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us and rate us on Apple and Spotify.
Well, I'm on 96 runs, the margin of victory for Washington Freedom, and that pretty much sums up how dominant they were, not just on the course of tonight, but over the course of the entire season. You have Travis Head, Steve Smith finishing the top 5 run scorers. Travis Head's half-century streak comes to an end, but on the flip side, his partner Steve Smith, 88 off 52 balls, 7 fours, 6 sixes.
Oh, he was brilliant, wasn't he? I mean, and it was kind of this old-fashioned T20 innings, if you will. A lot of the times we're used to just seeing go out there, hit the ball as far as you can from ball one, and the Unicorns got off to a hot start with the ball. You know, Pat Cummins gets Travis Head, and so you kind of he had to dig in, and there were overs where things just didn't go well. I mean, you had 3 runs coming from the over of Pat Cummins that second over, and then 5 runs from the 5th. You got 7 runs from the 3rd. You just weren't finding runs, and you could see Steve Smith was maybe getting a little bit frustrated too. Wasn't timing the ball exceptionally well, but hung around. And to me, it was the 13th over that was just the catalyst for the game. Through 12 overs, they were 100 for 3. Andres Krause had gone. Rushan Ravindra's in the game, but then. Rushan Ravindra gets out too. But then that 13th over, you get 28 runs off of Janoy Drysdale. And Steve Smith just teed off, and that partnership with Steve Smith and Glenn Maxwell, it propelled the game, and it all started for me with that 13th over.
There's almost shades of Nikhil Dutta on this very same ground on opening night of the T20 World Cup. That no ball, that sails way wide of Steve Smith, that to me just showed more than anything how rattled not just Drysdale was, but the Unicorns as a whole. They just looked like suddenly things were unraveling at breakneck speed, and it was Smith who was causing that to happen with the carnage. And you talked about this is classic Steve Smith and the beauty in some of his batting, but then you had the fury as well, and not just some of the big sixes, but probably the biggest cheer of the night, his inventiveness, his unorthodoxy showed as well. That scoop that he played over fine leg for 6, that probably got the biggest reaction out of the crowd on the entire night, which I would say this was a majority Unicorns crowd. For a neutral game, second final in a row, we've had a neutral crowd. Texas not in the final. I would say there were more people at the start of the night who were cheering for the Unicorns, and it was almost like they didn't know how to react. Like, oh my God, this is one of the most incredible shots we've seen of the season, and we can't not appreciate this.
No, that's what it always is. You got the team that you love, and then it was like me when I was watching some of these NBA games. The Celtics are playing well, and then I just see freaking Luka Doncic make the most incredible shot. I'm like, well, what you gonna do at this point? But it was just ridiculous what Steve Smith did today. And again, I think there was a lot of questions about how big of an impact was his batting going to be in terms of as a T20 batter, would he still have that same flow and that same fire? And he did it. I mean, again, today, player of the match performance for what he did. And we mentioned that 13th over, him and Glenn Maxwell got a partnership going. And then, even at that point, they still are on track to maybe get to 200 once Smithy gets out, once Maxwell gets out. And to me, it was just the Washington Freedom all season long won moments in games. And another moment for me was that 19th over that Harsharoff bowled to Mukhtar Ahmed. The one thing that I've noticed from Mukhtar Ahmed over his 2 years in the United States is he loves mid-wicket to cow corner. If he gets something full around his stumps that he can get his hands through, it's gone. He's got incredible power, and Harsharoff missed the Yorker 3 times in that over, and Mukhtar Ahmed made him pay for it. Goes for 16. And to me, that is such a moment in the game because you get not only to 198, you're going to get past 200. That's just a mental block for the other team as you're going into a chase in a final. When the wicket isn't really going to be that much better. It's not that much dew was going to come in. You more so chose to chase because it's what Washington was probably going to be worse at because they were a chasing team all season long. You try to put them in an uncomfortable situation. Now, as the Unicorns, they weren't a terrific chasing team all season long either. And now they got to do something against the grain at a 200 strike rate. They're just trying to get to 200. It was just a lot of problems for them going in. The 13th and its 19th over just changed the game.
And with that 19th over, it helped Freedom get past 200. They end on 207 for 5, and really nobody was spared. Every bowler except for Pat Cummins went for more than 10 and over. Cummins 2 for 35 in his 4 overs, but just everywhere the Freedom were pulverizing the Unicorns bowling unit, and with a total like that, it was going to be hard to track down as it proved to be. And before we get to what happened in the chase, we had a couple of people we talked to tonight at Grand Prairie Stadium. Top of the list to start off with in our sound bites on this episode of U.S. Cricket Daily, former USA Under-19 captain Rishi Ramesh, who led the side to South Africa in the most recent men's Under-19 World Cup that was at the start of the year in January, where they got to take on India, among other teams. And he's a Dallas native, born and raised here in Dallas, heavily involved in the community, and he's a rising star in the U.S. cricket scene and somebody who we hope to see not just play for USA at the senior level in the future, but also in MLC. And he's been involved behind the scenes with some opportunities in some of the squads. So he has a unique insight, and here's what he had to say when we talked to him ahead of the final here at Grand Prairie Stadium. I'm here with USA Under-19 captain Rishi Ramesh, who is a Dallas local, born and raised in the area from Capel, and it's one of the nearby suburbs. You were here last year, obviously. You were here for the World Cup, and now you're here again for MLC Season 2. What's been the biggest thing you've noticed in terms of the local scene and the way this last year plus has helped grow cricket in the U.S.?
Honestly, I've seen the infrastructure and the systems grow, and you can also see like the fans this year compared to last year's finals. There's a lot more people here. Even though like the IPL teams, franchises aren't here, there's still a lot of fans here to support. So it's a great thing to see.
As somebody who's born and brought up in this area, I talked to you last year about who your inspirations were for the tournament, and I remember you specifically said Ali Sheikh. You were hoping to see Ali Sheikh play because you played with him in local academy cricket. He didn't get to play last year. He got to play this year for the Seattle Orcas. But it wasn't just him who got more opportunities this year. All you got to do is look at the final. You see Sanjay Krishnamurti, somebody you spent a lot of time with, and there's plenty of other examples. Ayan Desai, Rashul Garkar. When you see guys like that, not just the ones like Sarvnet Travalkar and Andres Klaus, who everybody knows about, but the guys who are more of your peers, when you see them get opportunities and do what they do on the field and how they produce, what does it do for you in terms of your outlook and how you focus your cricket going forward?
Obviously, it's a lot of motivation. When we get to see the better U23s play in this league, it sort of opens up that door to where I know I can make it in a few years and hopefully be on the field. You know, before that season, we only saw one U23. Everyone else was just in the stands and just, you know, supporting. But seeing them play, it's a great thing. Hopefully, a lot more get to play soon. It obviously makes me feel like I have a bigger chance to be in this level. So it's a good inspiration for me.
What impact do you think the World Cup, specifically the USA-Pakistan game? I mean, there were a lot of people who may not have been aware of the World Cup, even locally, when I was walking around talking to people on the ground. And then it seemed like that USA-Pakistan game, a switch was flipped afterwards, and it seemed like there was a lot more awareness, a lot more interest, a lot more fan engagement. I've only been here a week or so before and since then. You obviously live here on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the things you've seen since then that you feel has been transformative for cricket in this country?
Honestly, I think the World Cup in itself was sort of a reality check for people, not just outside of US, but mainly in US, to understand that US cricket is honestly an upgrowing thing, and it's not something that people should take lightly anymore. Obviously, before those type of games where USA was making upsets, we didn't have too many supporters and people who really believed we could win. But now, like, even when I talk to my friends, they're like, wow, USA cricket is really going somewhere. And to see that from people who aren't even involved in the sport and don't know much about it, it's obviously a good thing to see. And we can tell that there's a big impact from what the World Cup has done, especially for this sport in America. So hopefully it just keeps continuing to grow. And I know it will.
For you, some of the opportunities you've gotten to be a part of as well, whether it's being a net bowler and getting to interact with some of these guys, or just doing some volunteer work behind the scenes, scoring and other things, what are some of the other things that are unique to you that you've been able to experience that have been enjoyable for you, whether it's MLC or the World Cup?
Obviously, just getting to know these players better. I try to stay around the top players and the higher stages of the game as much as I can. So even though I wasn't playing or I'm not playing, I try to keep myself involved. And to talk to some of these players, the knowledge that they can give you is just next level. You know, there's a reason they're at the top of the game. It's because they've been through it all and they know the rights and wrongs. So to be able to converse with them, it's helped quite a bit.
Is there any one particular example of somebody you've gotten to interact with this summer in particular that you feel is open your eyes and giving you more insight into what you are hoping to achieve going forward?
Well, I would say Andreas, but I talked to him quite a lot prior. But specifically from MLC, I'd say Marcus Doinis. I got to chat to him a bit, and I think the way he goes about the game is great. I think he was able to give me some good insight, so that was helpful.
Thanks again to Rishi Ramesh, Dallas born and raised, the pride of USA, leading them to the Under-19 World Cup in South Africa earlier this year. And again, we hope to see more of him down the road on the field, not just off the field. Now, in terms of the action on the fields, in the chase, Aaman, there wasn't a lot of it in terms of what the Unicorns did. Josh Inglis made 18 off 11, and that was going to be the top score until Carmine LaRue saved the Unicorns a bit of embarrassment by helping them to at least get past 100. Carmine finished 29 out of 19 balls, coming in at number 10. But right from the start, there was relentless pressure applied by the bowlers. Marco Janssen, 3 for 28, including a maiden. Sarbna Chavalkar finishes with 1 for 33, but that included some late runs that partially came from Carmine LaRue. But his first 2 overs, 1 for 12 runs, and he got the wicket of Sanjay Krishnamurti. USA on USA action right there, and Nut Chavalkar, the veteran, coming out on top against somebody who he's faced a lot of in the Bay Area. Sanjay Krishnamurti, also from the Bay Area, so those who know each other well and sort of used all of his experience there. Glenn Maxwell, 1 for 14. Andrew Ty, 2 for 12. Rachin Ravindra, 3 for 23, getting tail end wickets, including the game punching wicket, the title punching wicket. But really, they were out of this chase very early on. What impressed you the most about the way Freedom went about things in the field?
I think it was just how aggressive they were to start the game. I mean, you saw slips in right from the get-go all the way throughout, and they built up pressure. And even when things didn't go right, they didn't hit the panic button. Finn Allen gets 2 streaky boundaries to start the game over third man. You didn't see a huge change in the field. You didn't see a huge reaction. It was just they're going to keep bowling. Sanjay Krishnamurti edges 1 through slips. Doesn't matter. They're just going to keep going out there and bowl. Ian Holland drops 1 a point. Normally, some of the safest pair of hands that you see. He puts 1 down. We saw Obis Pinar put a catch down in today's game. Not their cleanest game out on the field, but it didn't matter. The very next ball after the Obis Pinar drop, there's a wicket for Glenn Maxwell, that of Shafan Rutherford. They just kept dialing up the pressure. They never panicked, and it was a lot like their batting innings. It wasn't the most fluent batting innings, and it's hard to say that after a team gets to 200 say, yeah, they probably didn't bat their best today, right? That's a crazy, outlandish thing to say after a team gets to 200. But it's probably true with the way this Freedom team played today. The same thing when you bowl a team out in 16 overs and you say, yeah, they probably didn't bowl their best today. That's an outlandish thing to say because you bowl them out for 111 after 16. But it's probably very true. And again, the story with this team all season long was they won moments. They didn't let these little passes of play to find them. When the big moments came, they stepped up, they made all the right plays, and that's why we kind of said it to start the season, and they carried it all through the end of the season. They're the champions of Major League in 2024.
Yeah, there was the drop by Ian Holland in the ring off of the bowling of Saurabh Netravalkar, but then he took 2 catches later on. One was a really outstanding catch out, I believe, at deep square leg. That came very flat and hard, and he took it on a kind of a awkward angle. Really good catch. And then another skyer later on for his second catch off the bowling of A.J. Ty. That was to get Corey Anderson for a second ball duck. So he made amends. Ian Holland. Wisconsin-born Ian Holland, who's also got roots in Victoria, and he made an impact. He's somebody who a lot of people were kind of curious about. What's his role in this team? He didn't bat. He didn't bowl. But you can't really say he got a thanks for coming because he was impactful in the field.
Yeah, and again, the beauty of this team was that everybody can affect the game in different ways. Ian Holland didn't start in the 11 this season. It was Justin Dill who started, and it was in the top 5 wicket takers for most of the year. And then they moved to Ian Holland. We saw Akil Hussain start the year, and then move to Rachin Ravindra. This was such a deep team. It wasn't just that they had 4 really good players. This team probably had 13 to 14 guys. Jesse Singh comes in for 2 games and wins 2 player of the matches. So this was a team that was so deep, and it was just impressive. And again, from start to finish, the best team in the league. From top to bottom, you would say the best team in the league. And they're celebrating. I just got a text from Saurabh Netravalkar after I congratulated him on the win, and he puts up the prayer hands. He's just so freaking nice. Will never just say anything outlandish.
And I got to follow up on this, and I'm about to get on my soapbox here because Saurabh Netravalkar, he's a gem of a guy. You sent him a text, and he responded pretty quickly. There's a lot of things going on here at the ground right now, but he took the time to respond to you. And he was one of only 2 players to go out and take pictures and sign autographs for the fans after the game. There were so many fans here who left because it was such a lopsided match. And game ends, there's probably about maybe 600, 800 fans who were waiting on the home plate side of the grandstand or the third base side of the grandstand from the old baseball dimensions. And they waited and waited. They waited 45 minutes to an hour, maybe longer than an hour. And I get that the Freedom are celebrating. They just won the title and all that. But Saurabh Netravalkar and Jesse Singh, another USA player, were the only 2 players who came over to take selfies and sign autographs with fans. And when I think back last year, Aaman, you were here, MI New York, when they won the title, Nicholas Poran, Rashid Khan, Nash Genjige, Jesse Singh also, Tim David, Kyron Hard. It wasn't just Kenjige and Jesse Singh, the USA guys. The big names, Nicholas Poran, after what he did in the final, he could have done a whole lot of other things to make the use of his time. But what does he do? He goes straight over to the fans and shows gratitude to the fans. Rashid Khan, the most popular guy in Texas on the day of the final last year. How many fans did he spend time with taking pictures of and doing autographs and all that kind of stuff? And that was a huge crowd. I mean, everybody stayed to the end because that was an incredible performance by Poran. The game was in the balance up until the last couple overs when it was obvious Poran was going to finish not out. But everybody was engaged. It was a full house, and yet they showed the respect to the fans. They came out to the railing, and they took as much time as the fans desired to sign autographs, to take selfies, and it was actually the security guards and the MI New York ownership who had to drag them away saying, guys, we're about to go to the team hotel, the celebration, the after party's coming to the hotel. Like, guys, we can't wait for you any longer. We got to go. Like, this is it. And they're like, oh, okay, fine. All right, we'll go. But they literally had to be dragged away. And to see what happened tonight, I can't tell you how disappointed I was. I thought it was really poor. I have to say this. Washington Freedom, with as many overseas guys as they have, and all the fans who were chanting for Steve Smith and Glenn Maxwell and Travis Head, fans were going nuts for them all game, and they'd give a polite wave and whatever. And these fans were hoping for something after the game. And I was really pleased and not surprised at Saurabh Netravalkar and Jesse Singh, because Jesse Singh, he's always been great about that. He did it, like I said, last year with MI New York. He did it during the World Cup, the T20 World Cup. Every game, Pakistan game, Canada game, doesn't matter. Any game that USA was a part of, Jesse Singh always makes time for fans. And to see that they were the only 2, I was extremely disappointed that none of the other players came out, but especially the overseas guys who these fans are paying good money to see. I expected more from the Freedom, and I really hope going forward they think about that when they're in this situation again, and other teams think about that when they're in that situation again, because I just feel like you got to do better, especially when you're trying to grow the game in America. You're trying to encourage fans to come back, not just show up, but come back in the future. Kudos to Saurabh Netravalkar, kudos to Jesse Singh, but the rest of you got to lift your game, I got to say, Aaman.
Yeah, I mean, Saurabh and Jesse did it at the World Cup when I was down in Barbados. I remember everyone was screaming their name, and they came over and just sat there and signed. Aaron Jones was part of that as well. I will defend the Steve Smith just for a second, not about the fan stuff, but I caught this on the broadcast. They had finished lifting the trophy, and this was just a cool moment to see. Finished lifting the trophy. They went over to go take the picture with the signs, the tournament winner sign. And you could see that they were bringing the bottles of champagne, and Yasser Muhammad taps Smudge on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I'm gonna head off." They bring in champagne, and you can see immediately Steve Smith gestures over, and he, I can read his lips, says, "No champagne, no champagne." So the bottles are there, but they're not spraying it around. So that was a really cool moment for me to see. And we've seen that more and more through world cricket, but that was a cool moment I think I caught on the broadcast.
Him and Glenn Maxwell both. I caught that, and from my vantage point, Glenn Maxwell, same thing. Glenn Maxwell was like, "Hey, no, don't do that, not yet." And they were very aware and very respectful for Yasser Muhammad, and I'll give him a slight positive rating for that one to make up for the fact that they didn't go over to the fans to do any fan interaction after the game. But yes, that was a positive gesture on their part.
Absolutely. And so that was the story of the Major League 2024 final, with the Freedom winning by those 96 runs we talked about. And before we look back at this tournament as a whole, Peter, you got a chance to look at what the future of USA Cricket could look like in the new CEO in Jonathan Atkieson about the development of cricket in the U.S. and his plans for the growth of women's cricket and into the future of the LA 2028 Olympics.
I'm here with Jonathan Atkieson, who is newly appointed Chief Executive of the USA Cricket Association. Come to USA Cricket with a background in rugby, spent an awful lot of time in North Carolina before that. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be involved in U.S. cricket.
Well, honestly, it looked like a tremendous opportunity to come across to a sport that has so much going for it right now. Having just hosted the World Cup, obviously competing the second year here of Major League Cricket, with an amazing opportunity for the number of participants that you have. So when the opportunity came available to be involved, I jumped at it.
Now, Jonathan, I'm sure you're aware in your research prior to applying for the job that the two previous occupants did not stay around for very long. And so there are a lot of people out there who are wondering, why on earth, as appealing as some of those things that you just mentioned are, with the World Cup and MLC, why on earth would somebody who's got an established career and has a very good resume, why would you want to get yourself involved in all the tamasha, as the Indian community likes to call it, in American cricket?
Listen, just as I said, I think there's a lot of building blocks here. I had a lot of conversations, very open and direct conversations with the board during my interview process about what some of the challenges were that the organization had faced, what some of the challenges are that are ahead of me in the role, and had an open dialogue about it being an 18 to 24-month turnaround, at a minimum for where we are and what needed to get done. And I think all said and done, if you look at where it can grow to, that's what we're all trying to get to, whether it's the cricket community that's within, the participation base, whether it's the ICC, whether it's the USOPC, whether it's Major League Cricket and the founders that work on that. Everyone that's involved has a real passion for the sport, and I'll be honest, it comes through in every conversation that you have with people, no matter what role they're filling. It's just a matter of getting those things aligned to get everybody moving forward in the same direction. And I do believe that there is an opportunity, and we're at a particular inflection moment because of all the positive things that have happened to be able to make that happen.
Now, one of the things I caught my attention looking over your background, not just the fact that you worked in rugby, which is in a similar boat to cricket as an emerging sport, kind of on the periphery where you're trying to recruit people to get involved, but specifically, you spent an awful lot of time both at North Carolina and with USA Rugby directly involved with women's rugby development. Okay, and for people who aren't familiar with Title IX, in America, Title IX is what means you have to have equal funding for men's and women's sports and a lot of other things, education and other elements to it. But at a public funding level, that's often been a huge challenge to get funding for cricket because of the numbers that are so heavily skewed towards males in this country for cricket. You look like you've had some measure of success to change that in rugby. What do you think needs to happen over the next, you say 18 to 24 months, but well beyond that, in order to redress that balance so that cricket isn't so heavily reliant on private funding in this sport that can get around Title IX, and you can open up more funding avenues through public government resources that all the other sports in this country are able to enjoy?
Yeah, I'll take it in probably two parts on that. One, I would say, women's participation has to be a priority for us. Heading into the LA 28 games, we'll have men's and women's opportunities both there. For our women to be able to perform on the field there will be transformational for our sport in the U.S. The opportunity to shine that spotlight on what the opportunity is for our women to hopefully be professional players, to experience what this game has to offer, we can't miss on that. So we have to concentrate in the next 4 years on building a program that will be capable of maximizing that opportunity. Now, in the instance of discussing the NCAA, of Title IX, of everything else, it's an incredibly complex landscape. But I think if you take it away from maybe just some of the, you said trials and tribulations earlier, obviously the NCAA has gone through their own, but Title IX goes down into local sports funding as well at the high school level. There's a huge opportunity for us to maximize the support that we have outside of just the national governing body. Same thing that we look at here if we look at the professional game we're at today. Bringing in outside money into the cricket environment is always a positive for us. Whether it's private equity, whether it's government funding, whether it's grants that come in specifically from the Women's Sports Foundation or others that look at that, that's going to help us take what is a relatively limited pool of funds and grow it over time into a place that is sustainable. I think for us, concentrating on that in a measured way so that we know once we get to LA 28, if we look at that as the moment that it's really ready to kick on, so we build an engine, build the car, and that adds gas to it to be able to get it started and running post that, really should be our focus in the next 4 years.
Being here at Grand Prairie Stadium for this MLC final, how does this venue compare to some of the other rugby venues that you've been able to be a part of around the country, and again in a similar level sport, and what you envision looking at this and what other venues might be possible around the country experiencing an event and an atmosphere tonight like you're seeing here?
Oh, listen, and I'm sure your listeners can hear all the noise behind us right now. This is a fantastic atmosphere here tonight. So the energy, the presentation, everything that's going on around the sport. Apologies, I'm a nerd. I love to look at the operations and the sports business side of it. It's tremendously positive, and it suggests an ecosystem that is in a really healthy spot. So I think there's a tremendous growth potential for that. Compared to rugby, I mean, they're on a similar trajectory. The Major League Rugby Championship will be next weekend in San Diego in Snapdragon. They've attracted really solid crowds for that. They're building towards the 2031 and 2033 Rugby World Cups to be hosted here in the U.S. So it's a sport that is also growing, but I think cricket has a number of things going for it right now that rugby doesn't, where it's still building towards commercial value. It's still building towards a domestic fan base that obviously cricket already enjoys here, of 4.5 million households that Willow's going into, of an incredibly passionate fan base that filled the stadiums during the Cricket World Cup, the T20 World Cup. So I think if you look at around, again, I'll go back to the first thing I said, there are tremendously positive signs for the community that someone coming in from the outside, I look at it and say, this is headed in the right direction.
Our thanks to Jonathan Atkieson, the new CEO of USA Cricket, for taking some time to speak to us on US Cricket Daily. And now let's take a look back at the best parts of MLC Season 2. First up, player of the tournament. Now, inside the ground and on the TV broadcast, they gave MVP to Travis Head, and then the Bart King Award they gave to Hassan Khan of San Francisco Unicorns. I've already made note on Twitter my feelings about that one. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the MVP? Did it go to the right player? And best domestic player, the Bart King Award winner.
Yeah, I think the MVP did go to the right player. 550s. I don't think you can look past that. And I think the reason Washington was as good as they were, especially leaving Morsel, Steve Smith was not in the same kind of form that he had in Morsel when he was in Dallas. And I think Travis Head, just his impact was huge. The Bart King Award, I agree. I think Sarup should have won the Bart King Award. But it's this thing in cricket where it seems like if you're going to win one award, they're not going to give you the other one. You know, it's almost same thing when you have the NFL awards too. If you have the MVP, the Offensive Player of the Year, somebody else, even though Patrick Mahomes won the MVP, should win the Offensive Player of the. Are you telling me there was an offensive player better than Patrick Mahomes? Right. That's my comments with that. But yeah, I think Sarb Nethevalker should have been the Bart King. Should have won the Bart King Award. Hassan Khan was terrific. He was great. Played fantastic and real one of the bright spots, and I thought right up there. But Sarab Nethevalker missed a couple of games and was still, by and large, the best bowler of the tournament. Impactful in terms of bold in the beginning, in the end, in the middle phases. He was just so versatile. He should have won the Bart King Award, in my opinion. But the way cricket seems to work is that you get one of the awards. You don't get the other.
Hassan Khan, good season. We talked about him a lot on this podcast. I know you're a huge fan of his, but you hit it on the head. Sarvnet Chavalkar took 2 games off because he wanted to be there for the birth of his daughter, okay? And yet he still finishes the leading wicket taker, 3 clear of Rachin Ravindra, 4 clear of Cameron Gannon and Marco Janssen. Hassan Khan, 10 wickets at an average of 15.6 on the season and an economy rate of 7.09. Sarvnet Chavalkar, 15 wickets in 7 matches. So Hassan Khan played 2 more matches. Sarvnet Chavalkar, 15 wickets at an average of 13.46. Better average, slightly higher economy rate, 7.67 economy rate. And I know Hassan Khan, he also contributed with the runs. These awards, sometimes they tend to also skew towards the quote-unquote all-rounders. They get more impact points or whatever you want to call it. He finished as the 7th highest score on the season, 204 runs at an average of 40.80, 1 half century, 13 fours, 13 sixes. So it's not like he had a bad season.
Yeah.
And he was, in the conversation. But what Sarvnet Chavalkar did this year, to me, is head and shoulders above, and not just coming off the back of the World Cup. And I'm not trying to say that my opinion is biased or colored by his World Cup performances, but he was the stand-up bowler, head and shoulders. Like you said, he missed 2 games. If he plays those 2 games, he's going to more than likely be even further clear atop the wickets list. And the times that he bowled, the way that he bowls, and he's there for the fans, Aaman. He was there for the fans tonight. Come on. Now, for the conspiracy theorists out there, Aaman, there is a cash prize that goes with each of these. The leading wicket taker, the leading scorer, the MVP and the Bart King Award winner. It ranges anywhere from, I think, 5 to 10,000. I think the MVP gets 25,000. So for the conspiracy theorists out there, they might say, well, maybe they were trying to share the money, to spread the love, because Saurabh's already making so much money with Oracle, and he's got his MLC contract, and he's getting this money for the leading wicket taker honor. Like, why does he need an extra 5 or 10 grand for the Bart King Award? That's not the point, Aaman. He deserved it. He was number 1 in my mind. He was number 1 in your eyes, too. I demand a recount, Aaman.
No, again, it's hard to look past Sarvnet Nethevalker. If it's going to be anyone else, Hassan Khan is the number 2 in my eyes. He had a fantastic year. But yeah, it's just I can't imagine a more impactful player than Sarvnet Nethevalker this season. But as Starb's so nice that he'll say, yeah, it should have been Hassan. Good season for him, and he'll be more than happy to congratulate Hassan anytime he sees him next time.
Starb's the kind of guy who he will get his ukulele out and write a little song in tribute to Hassan Khan to say congratulations, because he's just that gracious. He's just that humble. Best overseas. There's a lot of contenders, and I know Travis Head got the MVP, but in the way that you talked about, you've got your offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year in the NFL, which might not necessarily be the same as the MVP. There are some guys. You've got Faf du Plessis, who is head and shoulders above everybody else as the leading scorer on the season, even though Travis Head didn't come close to his run aggregate. Travis Head being on the title-winning squad, you can understand why he was the MVP. You've got other guys in the mix, whether it's Steve Smith, who was joint second with Travis Head on the run charts, 336 runs for both of them. Faf du Plessis, 420 runs. You had Finn Allen, who had the century to help the Unicorns get into the final. Ryan Rickleton, who set the tournament on fire for an Orca team, which missed the playoffs. And then you look on the bowling side, whether it's Rachin Ravindra, who very sneakily, you got to say, finished second overall on the wickets list. Rashid Khan, another good season for him, 10 wickets. There's a lot of contenders here. Glenn Maxwell, the impact he had with both bat and ball, taking 10 wickets and scoring some very valuable runs. Who would be your best overseas, just pure overseas, not necessarily most valuable, but the one who is, from an individual standpoint, the standout overseas player? Who would that be for you, Aaman?
I think I'll go with Rashid Khan. We talked about Travis Head already. He's got his thing. For me, Rashid Khan on a team that the overseas didn't play great for Aaman New York this season. They weren't really much to talk about. And whether it was bat, whether it was ball, he was great every single game. Glenn Maxwell picked it up in the last couple. Matt Short was terrific, wasn't available for the back end of the tournament. But I just, again, we talked about, someone asked a question, is Rashid Khan the best T20 bowler ever? And there's more and more arguments to say yes. And what he's added to the bat in this tournament, he was just special. And so he single-handedly kept MI New York alive. He's the reason you had hope when he was in the middle. He brought hope to that team. So he's probably way down the order in the MVP looks right now, and probably the stats on Crick Info. But for me, I think Rashid Khan would be the guy who stood out to me the most.
10 wickets, but also 2 half-centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, not only was their bowling weak at times, but their batting was very weak. The fact that he stepped up in the way that he did with the bat was awfully impressive, so I can't argue with that. For me, I have to go with Faf.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll say, not just because he was the leading run scorer in this MLC 2024, but the way that he did it, as somebody who turned 40 in the middle of the tournament. For people who were not here, Aaman Patel was suffering at times in North Carolina. The heat was getting to Aaman Patel. The heat was getting to fans in Texas too. It is brutally hot in July in North Carolina and in Texas. And to see Faf du Plessis at the age of 40, the conditioning, the fitness that he had, up until the last game, I mean, Texas Super Kings, their playoff finale, okay? Hot early evening, and it was very humid against the Unicorns as well. That was more than anything. Of the playoff games that were played here in Texas, the Super Kings Unicorns playoff match was by far the most humid, most uncomfortable conditions to play through and to watch through. And to see him race along the boundary, diving, throwing his body, tumbling, all that stuff, and then to come out and to blister whatever it was, 45 at a 200 strike rate, and to have a Corey Anderson catch, you needed a moment of brilliance to dislodge him from the crease. And it wasn't just that. His runs over the course of the season, you're expecting somebody like that at the age of 40 to get fatigued, to lose steam, to finally, they're out of gas, whatever. And it didn't happen. He wasn't running on empty at any point in the season, Aaman. He kept chugging away. And he set an example for all the younger guys. They gotta see what Faf did and know this is the standard. And whether that's overseas guys or some of the U.S. domestic guys who, especially on the batting side, were not quite up to the mark. When you see Faf do it at 40 years of age, it really made an impression on me, and I think it made an impression on a hell of a lot of other people too, Aaman.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the way Faf finished 2023 in Major League Cricket, averaged 7, Peter. I mean, this is a world-class batter, averaged 7 last season, and then had a game 1 where he only scored 14. You're like, man, is it going to be another, a rough season for Faf? It didn't start the game. He scored 100. If you remember, he didn't start the innings off terrific with the bat, and then he got better as the innings went on, even through the heat. So it was just a great comeback season for him. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, the standard he set, Devin Conway was the one who got scores but wasn't fluent. It was really a lot about Faf's, the way he started to give Devin Conway time to get going. And so Faf was so vital to the Super Kings' success this past season. Faf is a great shout for the best overseas player of the tournament.
Most memorable moment of the tournament. I'll let you go first, Aaman.
Oh man, I think I'm biased because I was at Morrisville, and there's a couple of moments there. And this one never showed up on the broadcast. This was the introduction of the game to the crowd, and they're talking about the in-venue host who does the Carolina Hurricanes and the Durham Bulls, the local NHL team and the local minor league baseball team. He does the in-venue stuff there. He came to do this, and he's got a great kind of, just flavorful voice, and he is talking about players to watch. It's a Unicorns game. I don't remember who the other team was, but I know the Unicorns were playing. He mentions one Unicorns player, two of the other team, and says, you might have noticed I only said one unicorn to start us off because the man I'm talking about now is getting his first game today. And the way he said, the one, the only, Pat Cummins, and the way he introduced him and the roar from that crowd was just unbelievable. And I got goosebumps for that moment. I remember the San Francisco media team was right there and said, we got to get that clip from them to put over a Pat Cummins, like, highlight video or something for us. Like, it was just really superb. So that one stands out. And then I think talking to Dre Russ right after he bowled a 20th over where he didn't give up a single boundary, and just to see him gassed, we brought him a water bottle. He drank the whole thing, threw the whole thing on his head. It was on like his knees with 2 seconds. I was getting the countdown in my ear, and they go 5, 4, and he gets on his knees with 3 seconds to go, and I'm like, hey Dre, I need you to get up here for me, bud. He gets up and he's trying to talk through it. Those two moments, I think, away from the game, were probably two of the ones that stuck out the most.
Well, for me, I'll do one on the field and off the field. On the field, Corey Anderson's one-handed catch to get rid of Faf 2+ seed. That was, for me, the standout, most memorable moment on the field. Off the field, my man Aaman Patel, first American in the commentary box for MLC and the worldwide audience, whether it was Willow in the U.S. or anywhere else you're watching around the world. The history books will forever remember Aaman Patel was the first American voice on MLC 2024, responsible for 5 wickets. I'm not going to blame Darren Ganga for that. I'm blaming you for that. But history was made, Aaman. You will be forever the answer to the trivia question. And for me, that was a huge point of pride to see you do that and to be a trendsetter, to be an inspiration for so many other people going forward. That's you, Aaman Patel.
Well, I don't know about trendsetter or anything like that. There's plenty of people before me, including yourself, that paved the way for guys like me to get to this spot. So when you tweeted it out, was a cool thing. It kind of reminded me of in 2021 when we did the Ireland series, and Lenny Achaibar texted me. He's like, "Congratulations, you made your international debut," and I was like, "Oh wow, he's right." So it was kind of that moment. But yeah, that was very cool. And the 5 wickets, it helped with the nerves. I tell you what, when you have no time to think about what you're going to say to Darren Gunga because everything's happening out there in the middle. One moment we did forget though, Peter, Sanjay Krishnamurti, 72, unbeaten in a chase to win the game. They can't beat that.
It's hard to encapsulate in a single moment though.
Yeah,
but as a single innings.
Yeah, there you go.
He's an inspiration too. He's an inspiration. 21-year-old. Everybody who's a youngster in America saw what Sanjay Krishnamurti did, and they're going to say, if he can do it, there's no reason why I can't do it too. Whether it's Rishi Ramesh, who we heard from earlier tonight on the podcast, or anybody else out there who's an up-and-coming player across America. Now, just because MLC 2024 is over, that doesn't mean cricket's over in general in the U.S. And we were lucky enough to speak to Farah Gorsi, the ICC America's Regional Development Manager. Here's what she had to say about the development of cricket in the U.S., whether it's MLC, the T20 World Cup, or heading into LA 2028.
I'm here with Farah Gorsi, the ICC America's Regional Development Manager, and for those of you who don't know what that means that Farah is the most important person from an ICC administrative perspective in North America, and you've gotten a chance to take in the T20 World Cup and now MLC. What's been the biggest thing that you've observed in terms of how the last 2 months have helped transform cricket in this country?
I'd say, Peter, the momentum from the World Cup has carried through, especially this week. We're training, and I was just speaking to Jonathan on this, we're training at this very stadium, 180 teachers to Creo cricket, which is the entry-level cricket curriculum of ICCs. So the momentum's generated. We have school teachers and students in New York and Florida that will all be trained before December. We're looking at 500 teachers in New York, another 40 in Florida, and the momentum should continue, we hope.
What do you think is the solution in terms of getting more females involved specifically, whether it's from a playing standpoint or from your perspective as an administrator? What can be done off the field in terms of those other supporting roles?
Absolutely, Peter. I think we are, as a region, we're probably one of the most fractured regions when it comes to female participation. Number one is, and it's something that I discuss with our members continuously, is look around the room. There are no females on the board, and that's a big drive in terms of administration. Employing females, having female presentation on the board. From a cricket standpoint and from an on-field standpoint, definitely the equipment is a huge barrier for us as ICC anyway. We generally with equipment, or female-specific equipment, but also just allowing the current USA Cricket being the national governing body to allow and to create those opportunities for more females. I know just alone in the World Cup that when I was looking to set up the teams in Florida, Dallas, and New York, I was specifically targeting the females to join the teams, and there is a lot of females out there, and there's plenty of females who'd love to be involved. It's just also creating that awareness, welcoming them as the NGB and as ICC, but then creating those opportunities and having the sufficient equipment to be able to support a cricketer's longevity in this game as well.
The Olympics started in Paris this weekend. We've got Olympics coming up in Los Angeles in 4 years. Coming off the T20 World Cup and the momentum that's been generated, and along with MLC, where do you see cricket heading in the next 4 years leading into LA 2028 to ensure that it will be a successful event from a cricket standpoint?
Well, Peter, I don't think I've shared this with you, but I will share with you, and I've shared it throughout the World Cup.
This is what we want, a U.S. Cricket Daily exclusive, Farah. Bring it to us.
1 million children from 24 to 28, school children, 1 million school children will be playing cricket. The development, the grassroots development is it's on a trajectory. We've got the project is called Playground to the Podium. So that is my personal project that I've put in for the USA. Not only that, in terms of high performance, but with events such as MLC, minor league, major league, having major events in the US, it's only going to grow the high performance. Elite cricketers will come to the forefront. We're going to knock it out of the park, Peter, is what we're going to do. Now that we've started this trajectory from the World Cup, I can only see us increasing for LA 28.
Our thanks again to Farah Gorsi for taking the time to come on U.S. Cricket Daily. And that's going to do it for this season of U.S. Cricket Daily. Aaman, Patel, any final thoughts from you about the season that has just gone by?
Well, Peter, it's 2 a.m. in Mooresville, North Carolina, and we've had a lot of these 2 a.m. recording days, but, it's been an absolute blast, an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you and the whole team that's put this whole thing together. It's been fantastic, and, I can't think of a better way to spend a 2 a.m. Time call than on this podcast. So I appreciate everybody who's been involved, appreciate everyone who's listening, and can't wait for season 2.
And on that note, we've also got to thank Ollie Francis and James Carpenter, who've been doing the producing. You think it's bad at 2 a.m. in North Carolina. These guys have been doing it 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the
Exactly.
UK.
No, yeah. I have nothing to complain about. I believe me. I know that.
For them to stick through it all July to the weird time zones that we've been doing recording, I got to give a big hat tip to those guys for doing what they've been doing on the production side for Square Cut and Viral Tribe. So thank you guys for everything that you've been doing. And thanks again also to everybody else on the U.S. Cricket Daily team for making this podcast possible. That'll do it for season 2 of MLC. We can't wait for next season. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.